ultimately, I guess in my practice, we're just dealing with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are, whether they're smart or they're not smart, or they're successful or they're not successful, they're very, very good at nuance and authenticity. That's all anybody wants, you know? And so I have to think that, you know, AI may help us in some of these areas, but can't replace what we have to offer. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I've got a very special guest today, Audrey Lecrone. Audrey is the owner of American Accent Coaching. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I love this. I don't, what accents do you coach?
I kind of coach all accents now,
Okay.
But I specialize in different American accents. So, you know, when you're watching TV, or I guess you don't watch TV, but when other people watch TV,
I want to watch TV.
They may find that someone has an American accent, but they're actually British or Australian or whatever. And so they Google them like, what? They're British. That's
Right.
what I do.
Okay.
I help them with that.
Very
mostly.
cool. And so automatically my mind goes to Christian Bale, right? So, you know, he has a British accent, right?
Yeah.
But if you saw him in like American Psycho, you'd be like, well, clearly this person does not.
Yeah.
That's always fascinating. Do you find now that Harry Potter is out that everyone's British accents have gotten like a little bit weird? Because, you know, my kids will watch Harry Potter, and then instead of like when we were kids, we're like, oh, I'm from England. You know, it's like everyone takes on that Hagrid accent.
Yeah.
Or like Ollivander, like the wine guy. So
Yeah.
wand guy. And so like my 6-year-old, when he does that, he'd be like, no, definitely not. You know, so that they embody sort of like really old Harry Potter British accents.
Right.
Well,
Well, it's all about exposure. So
Right.
whatever you're exposed to, those are the accents you're going to grow up doing. Like my little daughter has started calling everyone mate because she's been watching Bluey.
Oh, for sure. And
Okay,
bits.
mate, let's go, mate. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we they say bits a lot, like these little bits, and my 8-year-old, she says bits. Everything's like, oh, these bits over here, and we
love
don't
that.
correct in our house. Like if you have like a really weird, cute quirk, we won't correct it until it becomes socially unacceptable. So we will let that ride all the way. So, you know, like my son would say flink instead of think. Now,
so
it's really cute.
Flank you.
Right. He'd be like, well, I flink. And so we let it go for a long time. But
Yeah.
then, like, he got into the first grade, and, you know, there was like a report card situation. And so my wife, Lindsay, and I are like, I mean, I don't know, but it's really cute. And I really can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
So, like, one day it's just really funny because, you know, so she says flink to him. And he goes, no, Mommy, not flink. Flink. Flink? Think.
That's adorable.
And then that was it. He
Yeah.
came up with it on his own, and now he doesn't say it anymore. And now he's not cute. Sorry. I have to give him away. I have to
Bummer.
get new kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Make some more.
Yeah, so, but
some
we
more.
definitely are full believers in that, like, we, you know, the cuteness of our children, like, I don't care. Like, as long as they're not, like, 16-year-olds, you know, saying, like, wed watch or something like that. You know,
Right.
we're just going to let it
Right.
ride.
And that's, I think, how kids get great personality quirks as well, and how they are interesting and how they find value in themselves and maybe uniqueness.
Right. Yeah. So how does one get into voice coaching?
Randomly, usually.
you, like, fall
Yeah,
into
it's
it.
like a lot of people, usually it's not actually linguists. It's usually people who were actors, and then they liked all the voice work, and then they got into voice work with that, and that was my path as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were an actress or an actor. What is the correct term?
Whatever the
I have
person
seen on
prefers, I don't
TV.
really care.
Okay. And so you did voice work and you enjoyed that, and so that was
Yeah.
your pathway
Yeah.
into coaching.
I was tutoring English. I was tutoring adults from other countries in ESL.
Uh-huh.
And so then I kind of mixed those two together. And that's how I started my business like 10 years ago.
Okay, cool. So
yeah.
there's like I see on Instagram. I was never on Instagram until like 2 years ago, and maybe it wasn't even 2 years ago, but there was somebody who was going to be hiking the Appalachian Trail. And so she's like, follow me on Instagram. And it was like in the news article because I was like reading and I was like, oh, look, honey, this person's going to be on Instagram. And so I downloaded Instagram and I was like, well, I don't really see the value to this because this is just Facebook, you know? And so, but I got on it because I wanted to see like, I want to hike the Appalachian Trail. So I got on it. And then of course, like fast forward and I'm just like sitting there, like my kids are like screaming at me and I'm just watching reels, you know, on repeat, very unhealthy, but still great fun. I'd try it. So, and there's this woman on there who she'll do like every accent and they'll timer. You must know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
right?
the blonde woman.
Yeah, and so and I always think it's fascinating. Now, they're not all good. There's a couple where I was like, I don't know. Now I am not a linguist, nor do I know accents, but I was like, they're still like very fascinating. Like you know,
it is
stopwatch.
Because each of those accents, you know, they're going to require different muscles in your mouth and different skill sets and different feel. I don't do that. No, I don't do that just
bummer.
because
I was actually just about to get a stopwatch
I know.
Just like, go. You're like,
if I
Serbian.
did that skill, I'd be like, let's go.
Yeah.
But I purposefully don't do it just because when I'm coaching any sort of accent, I want to treat it with so much respect that I don't generalize.
Fair
so
enough.
If I'm teaching an Australian accent, it's not just Australian. It's like, where is this person from? What influences did they have growing up? Like, how Americanized do they sound? How much American TV do they watch? Like how our kids watch other TV from other places. So that all affects their vernacular and their way of speaking.
That is a good point. So, you know, my son started saying like a lot, and I'm really trying to coach him out of that.
Well,
I don't know where he found it, but
probably I would limit his time with the Kardashians, and then it might help.
We're a Kardashian zero family, so we're no.
You think that, but like your son might be doing something else.
we're a net. You're right. We strive to be a net zero on the Kardashian factor. You know what? My wife and I are very progressive in that we are super into no screens. Yep. So we are, and that's we're very anti YouTube, which is great because this will actually be on YouTube. So turn it off. But listen, just keep listening. We'll be on other stuff.
We can just do some like ASMR stuff, and you can just listen like that.
So what happened was we're at the beach with the cousins, right? And the cousins all have their iPads, and it's just not an indictment against my sisters, you know, but you know, and they all have their iPads, and so my kids are like, oh, I want my iPad, and they don't really have iPads. They have these like really old, half broken things from Amazon. Yeah. And so they were watching it, and I was like, well, come on, let's go to the beach. I'm like, listen, for me to say let's go to the beach, it's a huge pain in the ass, right? Like I have to like coat you in sunscreen. I have to haul all your stupid stuff out of there for like 15 minutes. You're there for 5 minutes and you've got like sand up your nose and you want a sandwich, right? So this is not fun for me, but we are there. We're going to go do it. And the kids are like, no. They just wanted to watch the YouTube. So when I was like, no, we're not going to do this. So I took it away and then they just like went crazy.
Yep.
And once I saw their response to me taking it away, my wife and I were like, oh, okay. So if you're ever going to have this kind of response, if you're going to have like the don't take away my opioid sort of response, then I'm just going to double down. And so we're like a screen free, and we deleted YouTube. It made no sense. The TV just put it right back on there, but we felt good about it at the time. And that's just sort of like where we are. And so right now I'm reading this book, The Anxious Generation.
Ooh, that sounds like a good book.
It's good. And so this guy is all about how what we've done is we've created an environment where we've protected our children from imaginary fears, right? Like you can't go play in the front yard because someone's going to kidnap you.
Right.
Like that is imaginary. Like no one is out to kidnap your children, probably.
Hopefully.
Right. I mean, but look, I'm just as bad. So I'm there and I'm watching my kids from the front and I'm like standing there in the doorway like an idiot. And I'm thinking, I mean, she's in the 2nd grade. She should be able to play on the front yard without me being like, oh man, she is definitely getting kidnapped, right? So it's in the 90s, we sort of obsessed over these imaginary fears while enabling our children to have unfettered access to the internet and exposing them to statistically more probable dangers, right? So what is more likely, that your child will be picked up off their front doorstep and be abused, or that they will be, what's the term that they use?
Indoctrinated?
Groomed via some stranger on the internet where they actually will be abused. Well, statistically, it's the latter, right? And so I think it's very fascinating. And so it's like, on the one hand, we've overprotected, and then we've underprotected. And then what we've done is we've removed free play.
Yeah.
And we've replaced it with these things. And so that's where I'm into right now. My wife and I are reading on it, and we think we've committed to being those eccentric parents who are just going to not allow it. Yeah. And I figure they'll hate me in their 20s, like they're probably going to anyways.
I
like,
grew
what's
up
the
with
worst
no
that could
TV.
happen, right? Like,
I grew up with no TV, and all of my friends always had TV, so I didn't know any pop culture references.
Sure, that's
However, my brain works differently than all of my peers. I'm a little bit slower and more methodical, and I'm less like all over the place. And I really am happy they did. Like, yeah, at the time when I was 14 and I wasn't allowed to watch anything.
Right.
We had one channel too, and I wasn't allowed to watch anything on it. It was so frustrating. But yeah, of course I was mad then, but I'm really grateful then.
I think there's benefit
now.
to it. Yeah. So they're seeing kids with unparalleled, untold rates of depression, social anxiety.
Right.
That's it's like the new thing. Like every child is like, I'm socially anxious. And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't think you are. I think you just might.
Well, they don't have coping mechanisms for how to calm themselves because it's just looking at a screen.
They don't know how to cope. Right. And there'd be no reason to learn how to cope because they weren't learning those mechanisms through free play out on the schoolyard.
Yeah.
They were glued to a tablet or whatever you want to call it. So
I do the same thing with my child.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great.
Why don't you be bored? You can be bored. That's fine. Look at your fingernails. Look at your hand.
Yeah, we were always bored.
Yeah.
I was like,
being bored is
great. We're bored all the time. I still get bored.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to be bored.
Yeah.
And the reason I feel so passionate about this is because when I first started practicing law, there was no iPhone. There was, now I'm not like that old, but there was like a very advanced BlackBerry.
Okay.
But it literally did nothing. And so when you got in the elevator, you would say hello to everyone in the elevator and like, what are you up to these days? Oh, how about that weather, right? Whatever it might be. And then when the iPhone came out, it sort of changed everything. And then really wasn't the iPhone. It's the iPhone with social media, right? So once a smartphone with social media became readily available, the second you walk into an elevator, I mean, I could be standing next to a person I've known for a million years and everybody's like, it becomes like a crux for just not feeling like engaging, not wanting to engage. It's just more comforting to I'll just sit here and like look at more Instagram reels. And so I know if I'm doing that, I don't want my kids to be that way. I don't think that's healthy.
Right.
I have to force myself now to be like, hello, how are you? Like, I'm just like,
do you like lower your voice like that too? Like,
probably.
Hello.
Yeah. Like, hello. Everyone's like, wow, he's really weird.
He's got a really nice, low, rich voice.
I've heard him talk, but then he gets in the elevator and it's all baritone. Right? I'm like,
there's elevator music and then elevator talk as well.
Right. So when we talk about accents, this is like a joke where it comes from, but in high school, when we learned Spanish, we learned from little tapes that they would put in. And so for the first like 3 years of learning Spanish, I learned from the tapes. And so it'd be like, hola, me llamo Juan. ¿Y tú? Me llamo Susana. Mucho gusto. Right. Yeah. And so that was the Spanish that I learned. And then I was like lived in Mexico for a little while and everybody was like, he is very unique. He's a unique fellow with a strange accent. Like I was always on like the radio. I was always like on a commercial for like sábado.
Locutor.
Right. Yeah. So, it's interesting. So, but it plays in with the accents. So, how do you do this? So talk to me. Are you from Southeast Louisiana?
No, I've been here 10 years.
Okay. I could tell. I was like, she's definitely not from here.
How could you tell?
Well, you have an accent, first and foremost. How do you handle the Louisiana accent? Because it's the one time, like Hollywood really can't wrap their heads around.
It's so frustrating.
It's really, sometimes 20, 30 years ago, the movies all like think we're from North Carolina, South Carolina, right? So that's not it, right? Then you try doing the Cajun accent, and that's just like embarrassing. Everyone's like, it's awkward, right? Brad Pitt, maybe like he he tried for Benjamin Button. Like I thought he really kind of was getting there, but it was like very exaggerated too, right? But it was, you know, at a certain point, you're like, you could also just not have an accent and nobody would say anything. Like I don't have an accent, right? You know, so if you had to approach South Louisiana, like what do you do?
Well, a lot of times the decision comes to the producers, and I'm like, here are some options for sounds that they can have. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound like New Orleans. And I'm like, how long have you been here? 2 days?
Yeah,
like,
right.
This is New Orleans. Like, this is what it is. And so that's part of the problem. And then I just...
That's a tough one.
It is. I've taught it before, and I always want to get it right so I can, please my neighbors.
You know,
and not hear this complaint all the time, which it's a good complaint to have because all of the New Orleans accents are so misrepresented on screen.
They are. And they're so different for being such a small area. Like I can hear if you grew up in Kenner or you grew up in Chalmette or maybe you grew up on the West Bank.
Yeah.
I can hear generationally. So like if you were to hear my father talk, you would hear this sort of maybe akin to a Brooklyn style accent. That's really in the new generation kind of gone.
Yeah,
it's really not there anymore. But you can hear just in the Greater New Orleans area. I mean, they're all. I don't know if other cities have this.
A lot of cities don't. But I'm curious, what about your accent?
Oh, I don't have one. I'm neutral.
How? How did you become that way, and why? Was it a conscious decision, or
no? Probably a lot of TV. Right. I went to college in Dallas. And I just, in New Orleans in general, where you grew up, that it's more accent neutral, depending on like maybe where you went to school or like where, so I think that's just sort of the product. So like I went to like private school and then went to like, a college in Dallas. And so I view myself as being like just very ubiquitous, not having any accent at all. But I still can spot it from around town when others have it.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Where do you think?
Like Ukraine?
Oh.
Really? Did I get way off base?
Yeah.
Not even close?
Not even close. I sound not American to you?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Oh, wow. I really thought I had that. All right.
I appreciate it.
The North?
Yeah, basically, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm from Kansas.
Oh, well, that's like Ukraine.
Basically, Ukraine. Like, thing. I could just speak like this and then...
like I was actually surprised. Accent. I was expecting you to have like a cigarette right now. Like,
like... I've been out of Ukraine for like a couple years.
Right. You have like a little like pet, giraffe in like your bag.
And I undo the neck and I just have the vodka in it.
Okay, so Kansas. Yeah, I really didn't see that. Interesting. My wife's from Indiana. And she has like the most Indiana accent, but every now and then she doesn't think she does, and I'll make fun of her. Like if she says doll.
But that's the thing, is that everybody has an accent. Even if you feel like you don't have an accent, you might have a generalized sound, but your voice and the way you speak is kind of like a thumbprint. So it's called an idiolect. This is your personality of your voice. And so you have your own idiolect. It might be different than all members of your family and different from all of your peers. And it's just the unique way that you view yourself in the world and how it comes out in your mouth.
What I always think is fascinating is you hear yourself one way, and then we'll record this nonsense, and then they will send me the video, and then I will watch it and be like, well, that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
I don't sound anything like that, So like I'm aware that I have like a high-pitched nasal voice. I swear I never had that before. I don't know where it came from. I don't know when it started.
We would call it in your mask, or it's very bright here in all these resonators.
I apologize. It's very bright. So all of our listeners.
So one trick that you can do, actually, if you're ever curious about hearing your own voice, is you take your hands like this, and just kind of like a water slide to your ear, and then you can hear. So make it. Cup it so it has a little pathway to go back to your ear.
I'm going to do that in a courtroom.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen,
excuse me, Your Honor. I'm just hearing my own voice right now.
Just want to make sure. So, test.
So you're doing more like this, but you make it like a slide.
I got it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Exactly. You make it a tunnel to your ear with your hands, and then you can actually redirect the sound into your ear.
That's fascinating. So I have to be on my feet sometimes as a lawyer, and I just have to like talk. about stuff. And I find if I pay too much attention to my own voice, I lose track of my thought. So it's happened a couple of times where, you start hearing yourself talking, and then I'm like, but somewhere there's like a disconnect. So you're hearing the physical things that are happening, and then your brain just shuts down because I was like, oh, no, we were listening to you. What was that? I was like, well, no, I was listening to you.
I train a lot of lawyers from other countries and other professions as well. And so I teach them this stamina of how to split your brain in half.
Yeah.
You're thinking about what you're saying and how you're saying simultaneously.
It's very difficult to do.
It is very difficult.
Because you're, you can do it here, right? Because this is very low stress. But if you're in a suit, you're in a courtroom, you're in Louisiana, so you're already sweating, right? Because let's like cut the shit. You parked 3 blocks down, and it's like 100 degrees outside, right? And so you have to like look very you're cool and calm, but in actuality you're dripping in sweat.
Yeah.
And then there's like a packed room, and like all your contemporaries are there watching you, and they're all judging you, right? Because we're all like, this guy's an idiot. Can't wait to hear what he's gonna say. Come on, let's hear it. Come on, where are you gonna go with this one?
So there's little triggers that you can do for yourself. Like if you know your body and your voice well enough, you can train the trigger beforehand, and you just have to think, let go of my belly, or let go of my butt, or like breathe from my chest or something. So everyone's bodies are different in where they hold tension. So you just have to find where your tension lies, and then you can more easily learn how to think about what you're saying and how you're saying at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to try that. I don't get in the courtroom as much, but
because you're overseeing all the lawyers under you, right?
Right.
How do you like that, where it's more of a management position?
It's awkward. You know what it is? It's always that fear that like there's going to be like an upright, and everyone's going to be like, we're out of here, screw this. And then you're like stuck holding the bag, and you're going to have to like start doing every case. So, but, and then you're like, oh, am I getting rusty? I hope I'm not getting rusty.
Yeah.
But the truth is, and I kind of coach the guys here on this, like, look, do you want to be 60 years old taking every deposition and arguing every little silly motion? Like, don't you want to build so that in a couple of years you can handle like the juicy stuff, but then like the very rote stuff someone else is doing?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing I coach them. So like, I could go try a case. We got a case coming up for trial next month. My brain is going 1,000 miles an hour. What witnesses are we going to have? What are we going to say? How am I going to present it? What's our theme? Are we going to be emotional? I know our plaintiff, is always waterworks. And so let's really, let's play that to our advantage and blah, 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 and go on and on. But for the day to day, it is nice to be able to be working on the business and just problem solve with everybody. So like, what are some of the problems you have right now? They're like, well, this, and this. Okay. Well, because I'm 32,000 feet up, right? So my lens is fully dialed out, and I'm able to see how each team is operating. And I have the perspective of knowing like, well, so I know you think you're really organized, but you're actually not, because let me compare you to this team.
Interesting.
This is what organization looks like. You're actually
this is my favorite team.
Right,
like, can you be more like them?
So we get that a lot. Everyone's like, oh, I know your favorite, and I was like, well, we're not favorites.
They're just better.
You're all, they're just not so disorganized. But what's cool about it is everybody here has like a strength and a weakness, and you're never going to get all of it, right? And so he might be a little disorganized, but and he's always maxing out value on his cases, right? And he might be super organized, but maybe he's like a little slower, right? Like maybe we're not pointing fingers to anybody. They're not going to listen to this anyways. But even if they were to listen, I'm not pointing fingers. But so everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Nobody is going to be like 100% organized, methodical, really quick to get top dollar settlement. Everyone has to, and everyone's got a big docket, right? So we're very busy. So everyone's got to be able to juggle a lot of different things. So, but the benefit of not being dialed in on each case is that I can look at like trends and say, okay, so this, this is clearly working for them, and I can see that this is clearly not working for you, and let's find ways to adjust this.
Right. Do you feel like you're pretty good at recognizing people's strengths and weaknesses?
I think I'm like, I say that I'm 50-50 on hiring. So it's the same kind of concept. Like,
wow.
just like flip the coin.
Yeah.
Sometimes I am.
Yeah.
Unless I'm not, you know. I think, you know, I've got the advantage with my top lawyers here. I've known them for a really long time. I've worked with them for a very long time. So I know when there's an issue, I can spot it. So I am pretty good with that. On the new crop of lawyers, no, it's always like I'm 50-50 on it. Well, we have a really awesome lawyers here right now. We doubled in size last year. And so we had to retool like a few roles. We had to, you know, like, I thought this would work and it doesn't. So right now we're just operating on all cylinders. But look, that's going to last. How long is that going to last? You know, in 6 months right now, I could be like pulling whatever's left of my hair out and being like, oh, this is a disaster. Right. So, but for right now, we're in good shape. But yeah, I'd say 50-50.
Do you actually believe that after 6 months it will calm down?
It depends. You never know. That's what you never know what's going to happen. 6 months from now, we could be 3 months from now. We could have a catastrophic hurricane coming back through Louisiana, and
my God.
yeah, that's all cement.
Nope,
no wood, no wood in this place.
Oh, come on now.
You're all going to drown. No, you know, but we could have a catastrophic hurricane. Yeah. And in which case, then my law firm will go in this direction, right? And so if we don't, then my law firm might go in that direction. And so I never know. That's what's always challenging because, you know, the business, on the business side, all the coaches and the leaders and all the business minds are like, you have to be able to predict, you know, what your next year is going to be like. But how could I possibly predict? I mean, you can't predict BP, right? So BP has a massive, you know, blowout, and the entire legal landscape changes in Louisiana for 10 years, right? Or you have a Katrina event. And so, and it just seems to keep happening to us over and over again. So, you know, we have a vulnerable infrastructure here, and we're in a very vulnerable part of the United States. So I no longer, I try to predict, I try to know where we're going to be in 6 months, but I also, I like the flexibility that if Ida hits, you know, on August, 27th, 28th of 2021, within 48 hours, you know, all assets were in place. We had experts in place.
Wow.
We had our campaign in place, and we were ready to go to help Ida victims because we knew it was going to happen because I had already been through Katrina. Like, we already saw how this was going to play out. So I like that. I like that flexibility of, you know, COVID hit, and within 24 hours, we were fully operational and remote, except for me. And, you know, and it really didn't affect our operations at all. You know, so my job, I guess, is to say, well, I'm not going to try to predict the market. All I'm going to do is try to build an infrastructure in place that can support anything that happens. And we got it right on some things, and we got it really wrong. Like, Ida was hitting, and everyone's like, should I bring my phone? And I was like, bring your phone. Don't even worry about it. You know, so, you know, why would you bring your phone? You don't even need a power cord. And so, you know, so we learned, you know, we learned from our mistakes. But what I was reading was that failure is just your way to success. Right? You can fail your way into success. You only need to, right? You only needed to have one light bulb, right? The Edison quote, right? I don't need to have 10,000 versions of it. It's just the one that worked. So that's what we're like to say, that we're failing our way into success. So
nice,
right? So you're in Louisiana. Louisiana for a long time was sort of Hollywood of the South. Then it went away. Is it coming back? I think I heard it was coming back. I felt like it was coming back.
Well, so what's happening is last year there were the strikes for actors and writers. This year, things never really started getting out the gate like we thought they would, because there was the potential IATSE strike. So the other crew members and transpo drivers were going to go on strike as well. So the productions were all kind of holding off. A lot of people have not worked since late 2022.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. I'm just in such a different industry that unless I'm like actively seeking out news on this, I may not realize, you know, what's happening in the world.
Yeah, that world has really struggled a lot. Like, I'm going to Los Angeles this weekend, and I'm doing a workshop, and I'm struggling to find actors for the first time ever to take my workshop because they're all like, well, I'm broke. I can't even afford $100 because I haven't been working. I'm like, whoa.
Oh.
So now I'm really understanding the scope of all of this. And then also with the AI, like, everyone's kind of pausing and seeing where it's going to go and where it's taking us before they, you know, roll with everything, with all their ideas and all their budgets.
So you think the AI is going to influence the writing community?
Everything.
Or all of it?
No, you can replace actors. You can replace, like, I have a producer friend who's making an entire, what would be a crazy budget World War II documentary, and he's making it solely from AI.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's removing all filmmakers from the actual movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a weird shift and sad for us because we have to kind of, I don't know, figure out our lives. Just do some crying. Just
there are always
why
things
did I
that are
make these
universal.
decisions? Yeah, yeah.
Everybody wants to see Jennifer Aniston, right? Like there are like everybody. Sure, I can go see this AI version of World War II, but really, Tom Hanks is who gives me my World War II news, right? If it's not Tom Hanks's voice in the background, I'm like, I bet this shit didn't even happen.
Yeah, but AI can now
just
generate
steal his voice.
Tom Hanks' sort of voice. Yeah.
Tom Hanks will never stand for it.
Well, that's why they did the strikes last year.
Okay, that makes
so they'll
sense.
renegotiate that in another couple years.
So, well, look, we saw this with COVID and the changes, and it was just another change. It was another shift, but there's always another way through, right? And so that's why I said everybody went remote except for me, because at the end of the day, there's still mail. There's still checks that have to be processed. There's still, so like we can be as advanced and as technologically advanced, and we've got workers internationally, but at the end of the day, there's somebody like me who's got to schlep down to the office, get the mail, scan it into the system, call a client, hand them a check. There are, and so, I think all industries are that way.
Yeah.
But so the AI, I take a very different stance on AI from my contemporaries. So everybody's like, it's the future, right? And I'm like, it might be. They're like, it's innovative. I'm like, okay, all right, that's another adjective. But I've tested these products, and from my perspective, they're all beta, right? They're all ghastly expensive.
Yeah.
And they all provide a limited utility. And so every time I go to these seminars, I mean, people are like losing their mind, their brain matter all over the ceiling. And I'm just sort of in the back as like a naysayer, just sort of the horse by the door. And it's like, I don't get it. I'm like, okay, I think that the utility is so limited. And they're like, we're all going to be out of a job. And I'm like, I'm never going to be out of a job. Because I refuse to believe that, AI can do something better than I can do it.
Yeah.
You just need to have an ego that big. Once you realize that, like, you can't replace, you can't replace art. Even though you can. So like you have seen those AI generated pictures, and they're really neat, right? But it's not the same.
Right.
Like, and you can and they're like their marks. So there's like a tell, right? So like people run things through like large language models, and they're like, we wrote this. I'm like, you can tell when something has been run through, right?
Yeah.
There's like a cadence to it that's unnatural.
Right.
So it's a lot like your work. Like you can spot if you've done it long enough. Like you can spot, inauthenticity, in the way that it's done. And ultimately, I guess in my practice, we're just dealing with people, right? And people are, whether they're smart or they're not smart, or they're successful, they're not successful, they're very, very good at nuance and authenticity. That's all anybody wants, and so I have to think that, AI may help us in some of these areas, but can't replace what we have to offer. So could be wrong.
Well, fingers crossed.
Could all be screwed.
I mean, if we're screwed, we just have to pivot.
No, just something else.
Yeah, same as your hurricane response. Just pivot and figure out something else.
I'll just go be a barista.
There you go.
Like college, like I would love it. You just drink coffee all day long.
Yeah.
And just do that.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, right. We used to do it. We'd go smoke in the back and make all the customers wait, and then come back in and be like,
sounds so
what
edgy.
do you want? Right, yeah. Exactly, right.
So I see this in your future. I think that's a good plan.
Take up smoking again. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, sure.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it. I'm getting this thing in the background, but thank you. It was great meeting you. It was great hearing about what you're doing. I'm fascinated by this voice coaching. In part because I don't like my own voice, and I suspect, like many others, think it's weird and nasally.
If you need private coaching, I'm here for you.
I might, because I would like for this to be my voice all the time. But let our viewers know where they can find you. All of our millions and millions of subscribers out there.
Yes, millions of viewers. There's 3 ways you can find me. First, I have my own podcast where I talk to celebrities about their voice and accents. It's called The Unmuted Show, and you can find it at unmutedshow.com.
Okay.
Then I have, since you're on Instagram all the time, you can find me at American Accent Coaching, or you can just look up my name, Audrey Lecrone, and it'll have all the links, because I'm also a jazz singer here in New Orleans, so my band is called Audrey Lecrone and the Crawzaddies.
I like it.
So you can find that on the local music listings, or...
Where do y'all play?
Tomorrow I'm playing at 3090 on Frenchman Street.
That's how you know you're old, when like someone says a name and you're like, what?
Well, yeah, you're too busy with work.
I know.
You need to get out.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, hang out.
Right.
I play there like twice a month at 3090. It's on Frenchman Street. It's right by Bambula's, if you know that one.
Totally. No, I don't know.
Any of them.
I don't know any of them. I haven't been on Frenchman Street in probably 20 years.
Wow. Oh, it's changed a lot. It's a little more bourbon-y. It's sad.
Okay. Okay. But you know what? But the last time I was on Frenchman was actually to see a band, which was one of my old college professors had like a Zydeco band that was really great.
Cool.
And they broke up. But I was there. It was great fun. I haven't been back since. So maybe I'll need to make a...
Yeah, I have a
we'll stop
fantastic
by.
jazz band. My theory is always hire people who are way, way better than me.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's
so
how
I'm
it works.
basically getting a graduate degree in music from them just by playing with them. It's incredible.
That's fascinating.
So yeah, you should definitely check it out.
Do you play an instrument or do you sing?
I sing.
Okay, I figured you did, but I thought I would just... You
That's
entertain,
yes,
right.
I'm
okay.
an entertainer.
You bring the pleasure to the business side of jazz.
Yes, exactly.
I like it. Okay, well, hey, thanks so much for coming. It was great meeting you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.